Thursday, May 14th, 2026, Vaavu Atoll, Maldives. 5 Italian divers enter the water in the morning. Scientists, researchers, an experienced instructor. People who knew the sea with the intimacy of those who had spent years inside it. At 1:45 p.m., the boat's crew sends a distress call. The 5 had not returned to the surface. The distress call reached the Maritime Coordination Center of the Maldives Coast Guard at 1:45 p.m. The body of dive instructor Gianluca Benedetti, 44, was found near the entrance of a cave. Rescue teams believe the other 4 are inside the same cave, which is divided into 3 chambers connected by narrow passages. The causes of death are not yet known. What is known, and what makes this case more disturbing than a simple diving accident, is who these people were, what they were doing there, and what the caves of Vaavu do to anyone who enters them without the safety margins that dive required. This case is less than a week old, and the questions it raises still have no answers. To understand what happened at Vaavu Atoll on May 14th, 2026, you first need to understand who the 5 people who entered that water that morning were, because they were not tourists seeking thrills. They were professionals with a defined mission, proper equipment, and an expedition with a documented and institutionally approved scientific purpose. 4 of the 5 divers belonged to a team from the University of Genoa. Monica Montefalcone, 51, was an associate professor of ecology at the University of Genoa. Her daughter, Georgia Somacal, 23, was a student. Muriel Odenino, 31, was a marine biologist and researcher. Federico Guttieri, 31, was a marine biologist. The 5th victim was Gianluca Benedetti, 44, a dive instructor and operations manager of the vessel who had been living in the Maldives for several years. Monica Montefalcone was not in the Maldives for leisure. The University of Genoa confirmed that Montefalcone and Odenino were on a scientific expedition to monitor marine environments and study the effects of the climate crisis on tropical biodiversity. It was the kind of work marine biologists do in remote locations around the world. Documentation dives, data collection, photographic and sample recording of reef ecosystems that are changing under the pressure of climate change. This was not an excursion, it was a research project. Georgia Somacal, 23, was Monica's daughter. The image of a mother and daughter working together on a scientific expedition in the Maldives is the image of a family built around the same passion for the sea and for science. An image that made what happened on May 14th even more impossible to process for everyone who knew them. Gianluca Benedetti was the operational link of the group. He had lived in the Maldives for years. He knew the archipelago's waters with the depth of someone who frequented them professionally. He was the one who was supposed to know the conditions, the currents, the limits, the one who was supposed to be the expedition's operational safety margin. Vaavu Atoll is located approximately 100 kilometers south of Malé, the capital of the Maldives. The underwater caves of Vaavu are known for their strong currents and complex tunnels. It is not a diving location for beginners. It is an environment that demands specific technical experience. Cave diving is a specialty within diving that has its own certification, its own training, and its own protocols. Precisely because the enclosed underwater environment creates risks that open water diving does not present in the same way. In underwater caves, you cannot simply ascend in an emergency. The surface is not above you. It is outside the cave. There is a distance that can be meters or tens of meters of submerged passages. If something goes wrong inside a cave, the distance to safety is measured in meters of submerged passage, not in meters of water column. The limit for recreational diving in the Maldives is 30 meters. The 5 divers were at 50 meters depth, 20 meters below the legal limit, inside a cave system with 3 chambers connected by narrow passages, with currents known for their strength in that specific area. Initial suspicions from authorities indicate that the divers may have become trapped or disoriented in the challenging conditions. Disorientation in a submerged cave at 50 meters depth is one of the most lethal situations in diving. The zero visibility that strong currents and disturbed sediment instantly produce transforms known passages into dead-end labyrinths. Panic accelerates air consumption. The air runs out and the surface is 50 meters deep and a maze of passages away. Exactly what happened between the moment the 5 entered the water that morning and the moment the crew realized they would not return has not been precisely established. The causes of death are not yet known. What is established is the sequence of events that preceded the distress call at 1:45 p.m. and what rescue teams found when they arrived at the scene. Gianluca Benedetti's body was found near the entrance of a cave. Teams believe the other 4 are inside the same cave, divided into 3 chambers connected by narrow passages. Benedetti at the entrance, the other 4 inside. The distribution of the bodies suggests a sequence, a progressive entry into the chambers that, for reasons not yet established, allowed no exit. And a cave system divided into 3 chambers connected by narrow passages is exactly the type of environment in which disorientation, current, or equipment failure becomes irreversible in seconds. What happened in the days following May 14th at Vaavu Atoll added a dimension to the case that goes beyond the 5 Italian deaths, because the attempt to recover the bodies cost a 6th life. Rescue operations were suspended on Friday, May 15th due to bad weather, but resumed on Saturday. Weather conditions at Vaavu Atoll during that period were severe. Yellow alert for vessels, rough seas, compromised visibility. The same conditions that likely contributed to what happened to the 5 Italians remained present, complicating any attempt to enter the same caves to recover what had been left inside them. Mohammed Mahoudi, a diver from the Maldives Armed Forces, died on Saturday, May 16th from decompression sickness contracted during the rescue operation. Mahoudi was part of the group that had presented the rescue plan to Maldives President Mohammed Muizzu. Decompression sickness, the process by which nitrogen dissolved in a diver's blood forms bubbles when the ascent is too rapid. Bubbles that can block blood vessels, cause damage to tissues and organs, and kill. If the ascent to the surface is too fast, the bubbles can remain in the tissues, causing local injuries or blocking blood vessels. Mohammed Mahoudi ascended too quickly in an emergency situation inside a cave at 60 meters depth where the body of one of the Italian divers had been located. A controlled ascent, the kind that prevents decompression sickness, may not have been possible. The conditions that killed the 5 Italians almost certainly contributed to the haste that killed the rescuer who went to bring them back. The presidential spokesperson for the Maldives, Mohammed Hussein Sharif, emphasized that this death demonstrates the difficulty of the mission. 6 deaths, 5 Italian divers, and 1 Maldivian soldier who died trying to recover what had been left inside the caves of Vaavu. Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani assured that the Italian government will do everything possible to recover the bodies. The Italian Public Prosecutor's Office opened an investigation into the circumstances of the accident. The Rome Prosecutor's Office initiated proceedings. The Divers Alert Network, an organization specializing in diving, was called to support the rescue operations and the repatriation of the bodies. What the investigations still need to answer is the chain of decisions that led 5 divers, 4 of them affiliated with an Italian university, on an approved scientific expedition to enter caves at 50 meters depth in an area known for strong currents. The questions are technical, but the answers are human. Who made the decision to go to 50 meters when the legal limit in the Maldives is 30? Gianluca Benedetti, as instructor and operations manager of the vessel, was the professional with operational responsibility for the group, but Benedetti was also a member of the group, not an external guide hired for a tourist expedition, but an integrated participant in a scientific expedition with its own objectives. The decision-making dynamic within a group like this, where the operator and the scientists have overlapping agendas, is different from the dynamic of a guide leading tourism clients. Monica Montefalcone was a university professor with experience in marine expeditions. Muriel Odenino was a researcher. Federico Guttieri was a marine biologist. These were people with scientific training and field experience who understood the environments they studied. The decision to go to 50 meters, to enter those specific caves on that specific day, was a collective decision made by competent people, which makes the outcome harder to explain with the simple narrative of recklessness or inexperience. What the Maldivian authorities are also investigating is whether the expedition had the necessary authorizations for diving below 30 meters, the legal limit for recreational diving in the country. Technical diving, which allows greater depths, requires specific certification and authorization processes different from recreational diving. If the expedition did not have the proper authorizations for what it was doing, the questions about responsibility multiply. What is clear, and what this case makes impossible to ignore, is the combination of factors that turned a scientific expedition into a disaster. Depth above legal limits, caves with currents known for their strength, narrow passages between chambers, and weather conditions that made the rescue dangerous enough to kill a 6th diver. Monica Montefalcone went to Vaavu Atoll to study the effects of the climate crisis on marine ecosystems. She brought her 23-year-old daughter, 2 fellow researchers, and worked with an instructor who had known those waters for years. 5 people who loved the sea enough to make it their work. 5 people who did not return to the surface on a Thursday morning in May day in the Maldives. And the questions about exactly why that happened still have no answers, because part of the answers lies inside the chambers that the cave of Vaavu still holds. Monica Montefalcone, Georgia Somacal, Muriel Odenino, Federico Guttieri, Gianluca Benedetti, and Mohammed Mahmoudi, the Maldivian soldier who died trying to bring them back. 6 people in 5 days in a cave system at 50 meters depth in Vaavu Atoll. Investigations are ongoing in Italy and the Maldives, with the participation of international experts. The questions about the chain of decisions that led that group to those depths still have no public answer, and 4 of the 5 bodies remain inside the cave's chambers, as this script is recorded. What this case raises goes beyond the individual tragedy of 5 scientists and an instructor. It raises questions about the limits of technical diving in extreme environments, about operational responsibility in scientific expeditions, and about what happens when the boundary between the research we want to do and the limits the environment imposes is crossed, even by people who know the sea. Leave your thoughts in the comments and follow along, because the investigations will produce answers in the coming weeks that will change what we understand about what happened that morning. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share.